Welcome to the Deeper Into Movies podcast. My name is Stephen T. Hanley. I'm the founder and lead curator of Deeper Into Movies. We're a pop-up cinema based in London and New York. Today on the podcast, I am joined by actor, filmmaker, curator, and maker of fantastic movie merch, Kentucker Audley. Kentucker I've been a fan of for many years. He's in my favorite Alex Ross Perry movie, Queen of Earth. He's the man behind the incredible Movies brand, which makes amazing film hats and apparel. And he's back with a new movie which he's co-directed called Strawberry Mansion, which is fantastic. Thanks to our pals at Bulldog Film for distributing this movie in the UK and putting me and Kentucker in touch for this pod. Strawberry Mansion is kind of like Tron meets Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. It's a great movie, one of our favorites of the year. It's on streaming and it's in UK cinemas. I urge you to check it out. This was a great chat. Here is me and Kentucker.
Hello.
Hey man, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Really good.
Nice to meet you.
So if we go right back to the beginning, was there a movie that made you want to get into movies, or a film you saw that made you realize it's possible to kind of make cool, interesting, personal, low budget work?
Yeah. So it was in high school. I was kind of on this. I was playing sports. I was playing soccer, American soccer, and I was kind of focused entirely on that. And then I think freshman year in high school, I saw Bottle Rocket, Wes Anderson's first movie, and that kind of started everything for me because it felt like a different type of movie than I'd ever seen. And from there, I just started just gradually, slowly digging my way into like really small scale personal indie visions over the course of my high school years. Started, getting into some, like started smoking weed, started like, getting interested in into different music and art, and started leaving my athletic career in the dust. But yes, I would say through high school, I was just sort of soaking up a lot of these small indie films, and then never thinking that I could actually make them, or that would be where I was headed in my career. But just starting to explore what I was interested in, and just kind of look around, and because I knew I really didn't want to play sports in college, so I was just kind of looking around for what was next.
And did you go to film school?
Yeah, so I went to an art school in Savannah, Georgia for a year and dropped out after the first year, which is financial reasons kind of didn't really dawn on me how much money it was to go to art school, and how reckless it seemed to be spending that much money on this period of indecision and period of exploration that I didn't really have a game plan. I was just kind of feeling it out. So then I dropped out of school and moved back in with my mom and dad, and got a job and started working on a script because I knew I just wanted to make a movie. And so I realized I didn't want to go back to school, and I was just going to make this movie. And then I showed this after about 9 months of working on this thing. I showed it to my dad, and he read it, and he told me I had to go back to college. I guess that was because it wasn't any good. And so I went back to school at University of Memphis and started anew with like just a general kind of communications education that was a little bit focused on film and TV, but not really.
And how is that? What, were you discovering cool stuff in uni or continuing with the filmmaking?
Yeah, yeah. I fell in with a group in Memphis called the Media Co-op, which was this film collective that was run out of the basement of a church. It was disconnected from the church, but it was the church had lent. They didn't know what to do with their basement space, so they lent us this space, and we had screenings there and editing labs and workshops and this and that. And that's where I really started to understand how the pieces come together. And yeah, so that was kind of how I parlayed this interest into actually making something. And yeah, just continuing to fall in love deeper and deeper with indie movies. And um, yeah, I you just one step at a time, and it just kind of gradually starts to accumulate, and you start to find a new direction, sort of how to double down on the old direction, how to like keep keep stimulating yourself and keep trying to find things that are sparking your attention.
So when did you get your break? How did you get into acting and directing as a full-time gig?
Still looking for my break.
Okay.
I yeah no so my I don't know. It's like it's been a very long climb, a very gradual building towards something that resembles a career in film. But um, I think with my first feature, it kind of got lumped into the mumblecore movement back in 2006, seven, and I think that was the first thing that kind of gave my work some context. And though my movie wasn't like the top of the list of movies that people talked about when they talked about mumblecore, it was definitely in the pile. So just to say that you've made movies under the mumblecore moniker, it felt like okay, this gives it some significance. Um, and then from there, I just met a lot of these other filmmakers who were making movies of this nature, and they would ask me to act in their film, and I would do it, and they would get bigger, and they would um, asked me to act in a slightly bigger project. And then as their careers kind of snowballed, I was kind of along for the ride in some ways. And so beyond that, it just became, yeah, it was just a series of tiny little steps that have led me to a really minor plateau. But I'm happy with the view. It's not something I was ever really trying to do to like have a mainstream career. So I'm happy to kind of just float in the underground.
I don't know what came first. Was it the movie brand of? I think I first saw your video essays where you swapped out the Royal Tenenbaum score with Pop Hits of a Day,
Yeah,
and I remember you used Stained. Was it Stained you used on the Suicides?
probably. Well, that could have been Rushmore. I did one for Rushmore as well. To be honest, I was just plucking them off that's what I call music playlist. I wasn't really paying attention to the names, but I remembered the songs. But yeah, Stained sounds right. Um, but yeah, the idea there was just to uh, replace the carefully curated uh, mix of old and new songs that Wes Anderson would put in his movies and just sort of plop in kind of what is popular at the time of making the movie. Um, and yeah, so I think that was a pretty interesting experiment that I did for both. I did for Rushmore, I did for Royal Tenenbaums, and then I also did uh, a Garden State with the soundtrack to um, The Graduate.
Yeah, and did you do Dave Matthews for Garden State?
I did Garden State with a fully Dave Matthews soundtrack, and then I did The Graduate with the Garden State soundtrack.
Yeah, it was a great experiment. Did you ever get any cease and desists or directors asking what the hell you're doing or why?
A lot of whys, a lot of why did you do this, a lot of how dare you, but no, nothing official. I feel like maybe it was a slightly different time back then.
Mm.
10 years ago. I don't know if I could get away with it. I don't know. I did a series of video essays on 90s movies that were, satirically uh exploring movies that were maybe taken a little too seriously at the time, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of have um a new look at movies like Pleasantville or Powder, or movies that were really popular in the 90s that I think started to become a little, it's like a mainstream movie is a mainstream movie. It's like you can't really think that deeply about most of these things.
Yeah, I liked your take on Indecent Proposal. That was really fun.
Yeah, that was my lost video essay that I did. I did, and then I shelved for a while because I felt like it was a little too close to the bone. I thought it was. I actually liked that movie way more than I liked the other movies, and so I kind of lost a little bit of the satire and a little bit of the comedy, and I was just kind of like, it's more of a piece of appreciation, and it got really dark, and it wasn't really that funny. But so I shelved it for a couple of years, and then I finally released it once enough time had passed.
Yeah, I rewatched all those Adrian Lyne movies. I think he's amazing. The way he shoots things is really unique and interesting, I think.
Definitely. Yeah, those are incredible movies. I mean, I think Indecent Proposal is a masterpiece. I think it's incredible. I mean, I was just in Vegas, and I mean, I don't know. It's not really connected, but I was really remembering that movie again, and I don't know. I love Demi Moore. I love Woody Harrelson in that movie, and Redford, of course. But I think it's an incredible movie that's been sort of not properly appreciated.
Yeah, I think aside from all kind of over the top 80s erotic thriller elements to his films, I think stylistically and his execution is just really amazing. Even when you look back at stuff like Flashdance and stuff, some of the cinematography is so cool.
Definitely.
I think he's a real stylist.
A lot of style, a lot of just getting to the core of the emotional situations, and yeah, really turning the knife at points and really making you feel um, emotionally engaged.
Yeah, and he made Jacob's Ladder, which is absolutely haunting.
They're all haunting in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he does things you can't really do anymore, or you're not supposed to do. But yeah, I think those movies stand up. I think they hold up to the test of time.
And I think I bought a movies hat. Would it probably be around 2017? How did you launch that brand? Long before the A24 merch and stuff. You seem to be one of the first people to have a really cool, very specific film
Yeah.
apparel brand.
Yeah, I was getting the word early on from A20 when A24 was just getting rolling. Josh Safdie, a friend of mine, was telling me that the A24 guys always wore the movies hats, and I was like, maybe we should do a movies uh crossover, but I didn't really ever, I'm not that enterprising, but and then they started their own thing and took off. But yeah, so I mean the movies I was just doing a lot of satire at the time. I was doing a lot of just internet pranks and this and that, and the movies hat kind of grew out of an extension of that. It was sort of a comment on crowdfunding. It started as a Kickstarter, and I was just looking to raise like $350 to make 12 hats, because that was the minimum I could order through the company that I was looking for. So yeah, I just wanted this hat that said movies on it, and I thought maybe a couple more people would want that as well. And we sold like 100, 200 on the first, like within the first hour or two. So I was like, okay, well, maybe, maybe this can turn into a brand. But yeah, that was kind of, yeah, it's sort of that, still that line of satire. And it's like, what's the satire on? It's like a lot, it's a little unclear. It's kind of a satire on a company. It's a satire on a startup. It's a satire on crowdfunding. It's a satire on just personal brands. But also, I love movies, and it's also very sincere as well. So it's complex.
That's funny. Yeah, I wore that hat when I interviewed Josh for Good Time when he was in London. And he was like, "Oh shit, you're wearing the movies hat," and he took a photo and sent it to you straight away, saying it's reached. Your brand has reached overseas. But
Yeah.
that hat was really good because I have a weird thing where I like collecting weird movie memorabilia. Again, way before A24 started that whole secondhand store of weird movie memorabilia. And I always like weird hats from bad movies
Yeah.
that I find on eBay. And often I've got a big box of hats that I rummage through and I'm trying to find which is my mood of the day. You
Yeah.
know, do I want my Meet the Parents hat? Do I want this? And then if I
Yeah.
can't decide, I always go for the movies hat, which just encompasses movies in the big sense. So it's just perfect.
Absolutely. That's what it's there to do. You don't have to make the decision. And it's also, a lot of hats are sports based, teams based, so like I feel like movie makers and artists were left out of that loyalty, so if you're an artist, if you're a filmmaker, now you got your own hat.
And where did the art house garbage cap come from? Was that like a review? Was that a review you overheard, or?
Yeah, that was indeed a review from Amy Simons's new movie, She Dies Tomorrow. I it was I it was a review that not only called it art house garbage, but also attributed the film to a breakup of their marriage. So I posted that on Instagram, just saying like, okay, be careful out there if you watch before you watch this film. Uh, and then the idea just came up that like, okay, this might be a good little phrase for a hat. The implication being that like the way that some people talk about art house movies is they're sort of garbage by definition, like they don't have enough money, and so they're like, inherently pretentious or inherently um, something to be avoided. So I just like kind of calling into attention that mindset of like, if it's an art house movie, it's not good. Uh, that also had within that art, we had a whole art house collection line where we had sweatshirts that said "Nothing Happens," which is another common criticism of small movies where that aren't plot based. And another one said "Fell Asleep." Another one that says 90 minutes I can't get back. So
Oh man, that's a good one.
So just like a lifetime worth of reading reviews about your own work and just being kind of amused by the vitriol that people throw at small movies just because of their smallness. And also because, there's other reasons, but it sometimes it feels some very personal sometimes.
And when did you start No Budge? Did it start off on Tumblr? Is that right?
Yeah, so that was I started as a Tumblr blog 2011, I believe, just as another experiment to just it was like kind of the earlier days of the internet, um, and just as an experiment to congregate films that I thought were interesting that I didn't have other homes as of yet. I think film distribution kind of didn't catch up to the onslaught of digital, mumblecore and related movies that were suddenly being filmed and edited at rapid succession at that period. So there was just this overabundance of films and I thought a lot of them were interesting, but they didn't really have distribution options. And so it just seemed kind of inevitable and intuitive to start a place that would only be focused on these types of movies and just try to give some support and encouragement for these type of films. And so, yeah, so it started out off as a Tumblr blog way back then, and I just kind of kept it alive all these years. And then 2018, I believe, it kind of took on a new life. It got some good press coverage and it started running it as a daily operation. But yeah, it's still running. I still write up a film every day, post a film every day, and it's a good exercise, and I really enjoy doing it. And it gives me kind of peace of mind to have this thing to focus on all these years.
When it was on Tumblr, were you already posting like Vimeo films and stuff, or did it expand from there to a page and a platform?
Yeah, I mean, we on the Tumblr page we would just embed people's Vimeo links, and then we would just write them up and share them in that way. And then we expanded to, another simple website beyond that was it was just a Squarespace spot for many years. That was just like the same idea of embedding filmmakers' Vimeo or YouTube account channels, and then just writing them up and sharing them on social media, and just trying to, signal boost these films that were being self-released. In the last 2 years, we started our own dedicated online platform so that it's all coming through our platform now. But it's the same idea. It's just it's not an exclusive platform. It's not We're not a distributor. We encourage our filmmakers to look for other opportunities to share their work, but it's just a signal boost and a show of support and encouragement.
And how do you keep up with finding new submissions? Is this just become organically now through word of mouth in your submission form? I was wondering in the early days how you kept eye on all the emerging talent and shorts.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something I do every day. I just, yeah, the submissions are, I would say at this point, 99% of the films we show are submissions. Occasionally I'll come across a film in some other way and reach out to the filmmaker, but most of the time I'm just plowing through. I just watch all the films and determine which ones I think are most interesting, and then and write those up and figure out ways to showcase them. And also we have live screenings in New York as well for a lot of the shorts.
How is it keeping up with the submissions? We have started doing a quarterly short film showcase, which we really enjoy doing. It's really good for the community, but it's a hell of a lot of work working through all the short films and responding to everyone and then curating. So I was wondering, how have you mastered this workload for is it a new film every day?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of my job. I mean, like that's basically my job at this point. I make movies on the side when I can, but I mean, most of my livelihood is being a curator, is running the site. So this is just what I do every day. It is a huge workload, and it does get sort of exhausting to watch 8 short films a day or whatever it is. We don't get that many submissions every day, but sometimes there are just a massive amount of submissions to watch. And to yeah, like coordinating with filmmakers, curating the live shows. It's a lot of work, but also it's work that I enjoy, and I think that's kind of why I'm making movies now with a partner, because and he, my co-director Albert, he also has a ton of stuff he does on the side as well. So like between the two of us, we can continue to make movies as a duo and kind of share the workload. But yeah, we have a ton of stuff to do outside of being indie directors.
What have you learned from speaking to all these young filmmakers, dealing in this world where you can kind of make anything, you can upload something, but having it cut through and get seen or gain traction seems to be the biggest issue I get from speaking to aspiring filmmakers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very easy to make things. It's very easy to upload them, get them on to a, like when I was growing up, the problem was the distribution, the ability to have anybody have access to see the work.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's the easy part. And the hard part is to cut through the noise, like you said. And I don't know. I think it's a frustrating experience to try to make indie films these days, especially short films, because no one really pays attention to them. It's very hard to go viral off a piece of actual art. I think most of the time people watch videos, it's just really disposable content that are like prank based or, real life based. I don't think that it's a very encouraging like there's not a lot of to me I don't necessarily see the that many options with young indie filmmakers today. That's why I think no budge. That's why I do no budge, because I feel
Hmm.
like, there aren't a lot of options and there aren't a lot of opportunities to be seen or discussed or taken seriously, because we're entertained all day long with social media and just a sort of slick, glossy, cheap TV shows and memes and everything else. It's like we don't really have a lot of time left for like a thoughtful short film or a movie that hasn't been marketed to us incessantly. Or I think it's always been the case, but I think it's the wall that most filmmakers come up against when they realize that, oh, I want to make movies, and it's like seems so possible. Seems like all you have to do is make it, and you're going to find your audience, and then you make it, and then it's just like this brick wall you run into. It's like most people don't have their work seen by very many people, and it's quite a frustrating experience for a lot of filmmakers. But it's kind of, you have to evaluate what you're in it for. If you want to, do you want to resonate with millions of people, then you have to start looking at it differently. If you want to just sort of make movies for you and your friends and you're in a small network, I think that's a very valuable place to work from. And I think there are a ton of reasons to make movies on that, in that level and in that context. But you're not going to break through if you're 90% of the people making work. And I don't think that necessarily should be the easy goal for everyone.
Alex Ross Perry said something really interesting and sad, where he said when he was looking back at the filmmakers in the early 2000s like Sofia Coppola and Wes Anderson, the steps in their career where they went from a $50,000 movie to a 1 million and then a bigger step to like a 5 million. Well, the system's completely changed from the cinema market to the rental market to the DVD market, and then you've got the Sky and cable. So you almost had like four shots at the table to make some money back. So no, that's completely changed. There's the path and the progression of new indie filmmakers just isn't what it used to be, that everyone has to adjust to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a historian on how it used to be. It did seem like it was a little easier, but maybe that's revisionist history. And I think the unique part about today is that there's just way, way, way more movies being made. And so there's just this so much more competition. There's so much more content that is being, and there's so many more people doing different types of entertainment. So it's just a glut of things that no one could possibly keep track of. So I don't, I'm not saying this as looking at it pessimistically. I don't even, I think it's okay to make movies a different way and not necessarily be looking to be the next Wes Anderson or Sofia Coppola. I think there's a lot of territory there that makes it worthwhile. And then if you're the next Wes Anderson and Sofia Coppola, it's not going to be what you thought it was going to be. You know, when I just getting to the point where I'm finally making a little bit of money off movies, it sort of instantly becomes a job. It instantly becomes this thing that you didn't know it was going to be, and it's just another job at that point. There's still excitement and there's still creative fervor that is wrapped up in various parts of the process, but it's a lot of. I mean, we've been trying to develop a new script for like a year and a half, and we're just at the very, very, very beginning stages of it. And it's just like you start to wonder what is driving you to spend 5 years on a movie that you basically make no money on. I keep saying I'm not being pessimistic, but then I sort of circle back and
No, that's a valid question. Every few months, I think every creative I know hits that wall every few months where you just wonder, why the fuck am I doing this to myself? Why am I stressing myself out so much about my circumstance? Showing movies every week to 50 to 100 people if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I'm not changing. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not changing the world. I'm doing something small, but then you kind of think, well, what the fuck else am I going to do with my life? And I'm at the point now where there's no plan B,
Yeah.
and I'm not good at anything else. I don't think I like creating and programming and
Yeah.
doing little creative things, but yeah, I'm too deep in it. I'm too deep in it to change.
That's that's who's left at this point. It's the people who didn't have a backup plan.
Yeah, I think Joe Swanberg said that you just have to be a weird maniac to keep on pursuing this your small lane in art and creativity,
Yeah.
where you couldn't really give up if you wanted to.
Yeah. That door is always open. The giving up door.
Wasn't it like somebody asked Charles Bukowski why he writes, and he just punched him in the stomach, and it says it chooses you or something?
Yeah. Sounds about right.
No Budge is a subscription platform.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the next the next small step. I keep talking about small steps, but it's still just me running the show, and I've it's always been one person passion project, and but I feel like going forward, if it's going to survive, it's going to have to keep evolving. It's going to have to keep um, trying new things, and so yeah, now it's an app. It's available on Apple TV and Roku and Google and Amazon. So yeah, I mean it's. I always thought that these short films deserve to be watched on TV or watched with some more reverence um, than just sort of a Vimeo link, kind of like
Hmm.
between your workday or something on a laptop. I think like I've always tried to. I mean, nothing against Vimeo, of course. I've always loved Vimeo, but just the idea of watching it on your computer versus kind of a more uh, conscious decision to sit down in front of your TV and watch something you would watch a real movie, like a feature film. Um, so that was always the plan from a while back, but it's just like it's expensive to get onto TVs, and it was a lot of work. But I think it's at a point now where the vision of like, okay, theoretically, if somebody wants to sit down and watch an hour worth of shorts every night, they can do that. And it's they can add movies to their watch list. They can kind of reckon with work in a different way. They can group the movies with the filmmaker or style or theme, and kind of like start to see the movies in a more deliberate way.
And you have features on there as well, I saw.
Yeah, there's some features. I mean, that was kind of the original vision of No Budge is all features, but then I realized kind of quickly that most filmmakers were making shorts, and the features were looking at their movie differently than just releasing it online for free, which is what I did with my early work, which I thought it was going to be the norm, but didn't really turn out to be that way. I mean, I think, I still think it's a valuable strategy if you're, to release a feature length micro budget movie for free
Hmm.
rather than try to like, I mean, because I think most of these movies don't make any money either way, and just like the access is the important part. Um, but it doesn't seem like many people do that. So I kind of had to pivot to short films. Not pivot. I just started falling in love with short films as well. So and that was most short films were already available online for free.
Do you have a no budge favorite of all time?
Of all time, wow. I have so many favorites. I have a list of like some of my favorites from the first 10 years. That is like a 10-year anniversary playlist on the site.
Oh, cool.
That's kind of halfway down the first page. But a couple come to mind. A movie called Observatory Blues um, was, I think, a 2017 movie that I fell in love with. Um, Yeah, I mean it's indescribable, but I feel like it was yeah, I kind of rejuvenated my interest in short films at a time when I was kind of fading. Um, and another movie called Men's Thanksgiving was a really big one for me, which is just like a bunch of guys during Thanksgiving small talking. Uh, and there's no women around, and there's like no explanation of why it's only men, and like whose house. There's no explanation of whose house this is and why they're exactly. But it just kind of, it's just sort of this joy of small talk kind of satire. Um, but yeah, there's so many. I would say just check out that 10th anniversary
Sure.
playlist. Yeah.
And I saw you have Ham on Rye on your page. That's one of my watch lists for ages that I need to see.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating feature. That's one of our few features. Um, but yeah, that,
Was that a factory release?
yep, yep.
Yeah.
So we have like, I think 5 or 6 Factor 25 movies on there, and hopefully we'll have some more coming up.
I've got huge love and admiration for Matt Grady. He's a real patron saint of indie movies. He does amazing
Yeah,
work.
yeah, he's good. He's a good one. He's done a lot of amazing movies over the years.
So with Strawberry Mansion, how do you pitch it? A tax man in the future?
Thankfully, we don't have to pitch it anymore, but
What was your like elevator pitch? I was trying to explain it to my team today, and I was just rambling about a tax man and dreams and auditing.
yeah, I mean, at some point you get so tired of saying this the pitch or the log line, you
Yeah.
just start saying words like dreams, auditing, woman, remote house. Um, but yeah, it takes place in a near future where the government records and taxes dreams. And our story follows a dream auditor who is tasked with following up about some unpaid taxes of a woman living in a country house off the grid. And as he dives into her years of unpaid dreams, he sort of becomes to be infatuated with her, and specifically a younger version of herself that she dreams of. But yeah, it's just sort of a, anything goes kind of wild fantasy movie that has a dystopian kind of premise, but also but it's, it's about the visuals and the colors and the, like imagination and a lot. It's just sort of about a love of movies and a fascination with dreams, and it has some really faint commentary in there about over marketing and capitalism and where we find ourselves in a very surveillance heavy state. But it's not really about those things. It's more of just a movie about trying to connect with people and love people through time and space. As corny as that sounds, but it's a movie that isn't afraid to be a little corny and a little uh, playful and juvenile, and it's just like kids playing in the sand kind of thing.
And you and Albert have co-directed before, and I'm always fascinated by directing duos. Do you have assigned roles? Do you have your strengths that you both lean into, or do you do everything together?
Yeah, we have a pretty complementary skill set. I think Albert is more focused on the imagination realm and the fantasy world and the visuals, and um, I'm keeping an eye on just the general flow of things, the characters, the themes, um, the arcs, and the performances, and um, that's basically kind of the general breakdown. But also, we both kind of do everything and just kind of feel it out as we go. We're both not what you would consider typical directors. We're both kind of just have the scrappy. Um, it's like we're, in high school and we're just rushing around with a camera and just trying to get the shot. And we look at it with we look at it as amateurs, and we kind of keep that spirit of just discovery and youthfulness of like just curiosity and feeling like, well, let's just see what happens if we put the camera here. Or let's just see what happens if we, build this prop like this or move this buffalo like this.
I love that story of when Nicholas Roeg and Donald Cammell were making Performance, and Donald would work with the actors, Roeg would work on the technical aspect with the camera, and Warner Brothers were like, "I think this is the future for filmmaking. We just get two people to do everything together." Then they saw the movie with all the extreme violence, sex, occult mysticism, pentagrams everywhere, and they're like, "Yeah, fuck this idea. We're never gonna do this again."
I mean, it's a strange process to make a movie with somebody else, particularly if it's not your sibling, which most directing duos are. Um, you
I never
know,
realized that. That's true. Yeah.
yeah, and it's to us it's natural because we feel like it's too much work for one person, but it is hard to coalesce a single vision out of two people. And I think
Mm-hmm.
Albert and I talk about uh, this this idea that Strawberry Mansion is not what I would make, and it's not what he would make, and it's something that we could only make together. Um, and the joy of collaboration and partnership in that way is just to try to stumble upon this third thing that can happen when you put two minds together. And we kind of reject the idea of auteurship in that way. I think we're both very amenable to each other's ideas and the ideas from a lot of different people as well. It's not just us. There are a lot of it's like a whole band that we have built with this last movie, and that hopefully we'll continue to operate from. It's like a lot of producers and craftspeople and artist friends that we've enlisted to help us fill out this vision. And it's their it's their vision just as much as ours in a lot of cases. For instance, the stop motion animation in our film. It's just this animator Lawrence Becker who kind of does his own thing, and we just ask him to do his own thing and bring it to our movie, and we kind of mold it a little bit based on trying to make it fit within our narrative, but it's basically his style. And then with the music, with Dan Deegan, it's just kind of the same thing where just do your music, and we'll find a way to make your music fit into our movie.
His score was incredible.
Yeah.
The opening sequence leading onto the titles, especially, it just really took it somewhere. Were you talking about any particular scores or previous soundtracks as reference?
We had a playlist that we were all listening to, that but I don't think we were specifically with music and also with just the general visual style. I feel like we tried not to get too specific with what we were referencing. It's kind of things that we've heard or seen our whole life that has just burrowed down into our psyche and our being for so many years that we weren't, and it just exists in the way that it comes up is going to be its own thing rather than kind of try to mimic something specific. But I feel like we gave Dan a lot of freedom to just do what he does, and I wasn't really a part of a lot of the discussions he had with Albert and with anybody else involved in the music.
And as you mentioned, every detail of the set design, the props, the wall colors, the VHS player, it all looks so specific and curated. How was it building that whole kind of handmade fantasy look to your movie?
The general idea is just to stuff the frame with as much stuff that you don't normally see in your everyday life as possible, and as many colors and as many anachronistic devices. And I mean, it's a pretty simple process of like whatever is in the frame, don't make it look unique or make it look special, make it look
Mm-hmm.
colorful, make it, so like anything, that's all you're really trying to do. But you got to do that in every frame, which is that's the hard part. But just finding a way to keep ordinary, a commonplace period of now anything that's now is out, we have to just make sure that everything looks old. And I mean, it's this retrofuturism thing where it's like we have this freedom to make it feel old and futuristic at the same time, but most of it just feels old, and then we call it the future. We built some sets. The Pink Room was obviously built in a studio, and we shot some real places. Like the ship was a real place. It was a real ship in Baltimore, and you know that kind of comes the way it comes. And just filming in old bars and filming in places that look separated from the time we live in now.
How was it nailing that Tron look where you entered memories, which you've nailed so well that it's got that warm analog look without trying too hard to be retro or
Yeah.
analog, which is so prevalent these days. But this literally looks like it could be taken from a video store in the 80s in the best way possible. I mean,
Yeah. Uh, that was our, like just if it was in a video store in the 80s, it belongs in our movie. That's kind of the thing we were hoping to achieve. But yeah, that's a very just simple kind of hologram thing that Albert cooked up. A lot of the effects he can do personally, so he just did those. We didn't, I remember doing some tests for that because I was curious how we were going to do it, and he just whipped up some tests fast and dirty, and I was like, okay, yeah, that looks perfect. We don't have to overthink that any further. And then a lot of the stuff, yeah, just lean into the simplicity, lean into the lo-fi nature of it, the things that you can do that are creative, that don't cost a lot of money, and not try to hide the fact that we had no money making this movie. And just hope the audience comes along for a ride where it's part of the fun is like how cheaply the movie was made, and part of the fun is just like how far we can take this concept on a movie that was made completely outside the system as non-professional as possible. So that's the fun for me, and people will talk about a lot of times to say like, oh, these directors, maybe they'll, like, once they have more money, they'll make a better movie. And to me, that just is completely wrong. It's like the fact that we had no money here is kind of what makes the movie good. And I can imagine making movies on this level for my life. And like, just, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It really, it's just what you do with the money, what you do, how creative you can stay, and how true to a vision and a way of expressing yourself, or saying something about the world, or saying something about in a poetic way that has nothing to do with how much money you have.
absolutely. Yeah. You were in Carve's show about the show. Carve comes up a lot on the podcast because we're all fascinated and obsessed with him. How was it working with him?
Well, I couldn't really tell you. I don't. So I guess I'm in the show, but I haven't seen it. And I think I was on a couple episodes, but he was like, he told me who I was supposed to be playing after we shot it the first time, and then I was like, oh, well, I was supposed to be somebody here, and I felt a little uncomfortable with the fact that I was playing another filmmaker that I knew, and I wasn't told. So he was like, I was like, I don't know if I don't know if that's.
Are you the guy who's blurred out in the?
Yeah, so that's what he said. So he said, "Don't worry, your face is going to be blurred." And I was like, "Okay, well now I didn't know my face was going to be blurred either." So, yeah. And then I think he asked me back for one other episode, but
Oh yeah, when you pop up a Metrograph, I think, in at the
yeah,
screening where you're getting fuck.
but I don't know if that was supposed to be the same character. You tell me. Was his
I
was
think
my
so.
was my face blurred on that one?
I think you were just in the distance, and he says, and I saw whoever from the first episode who was at the screening at another screening, and obviously wasn't here for the Carve screening. But yeah, that's just pure Carve. That's
Yeah, that's how Kave rolls.
yeah. I just realized I was on Factory site before I was talking to you, looking at your movies that were on Factory, and I saw you had the Sheik and I with the caption, "The best tagline ever: Lights, camera, fatwa," which is
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. He's a lore unto himself.
Yeah, yeah, I love his stuff. I think I've decided not to participate anymore, but
That's what I find so funny. Even we did a screening of his new movie in London, and I said, let me give you all the ticket sales toward Show About the Show, because Show About the Show has brought me so much joy over the years. It only seems fair. Selfishly, I just want more episodes to watch myself.
yeah.
And he said, that's great. And then I thought I sent the PayPal link, the PayPal funds over, and it didn't go through. And then Carver said, hey, did you ever pay me? And I was like, oh shit. And I checked and it didn't go through because of a dollar conversion or whatever. And I resent it and it went through. And now I was like, fuck, am I going to be the cheap guy from London who flaked on paying him and had this, story about
Yeah.
my PayPal glitching and whatever on an international transfer? And yeah, I think that's what's funny about it. Everyone's terrified of talking to him or sharing anything or interacting.
Yeah, I have no problem with, I love his art, but I do feel like I'm terrified to get into the orbit any further.
Yeah, once you're in the metaverse, fast
Yeah.
the cover universe, you're kind of
A lot of people talk to me about being in that, and I've done a lot of things, and I feel like over the last couple of years, that's the thing that people mentioned to me the most. And I was there for like a really confusing 30 minutes on, in combination, those two shoots where I was there for a total of 30 minutes and I had no idea what I was doing. And my face is blurred out. And people are like, I saw you in Kabe's things. Like, okay, I guess people are watching that and figuring out it's me somehow.
yeah. It's kind of a weird thing when I hear directors or actors are remembered for things that you never like. But yeah, I often mention things like, yeah, there's other things I'm more proud of, or there's other things I feel I was a lot better in. But yeah, you can't choose.
It's tough, yeah. You think you spend years on a project and people respond to it in certain ways, and then you just show up at Metrograph for 20 minutes and just like no idea what to do, and just, okay, that's what you did.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Man, this has been so nice talking. I'm a huge fan of your movies, and No Budge has been a really big influence on us. And I love movies brands. So thanks for taking the time.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I love Deeper Into Movies. Much appreciated.
Boom. That was me and Kentucker. Sorry, I can't really talk about who Kentucker was playing in Show About the Show. You can probably Google it and find out, but I didn't want to snitch. Anyway, that was a great talk. Check out Movies Brands. Check out No Budge. Check out Strawberry Mansion. Kentucker's doing good work, man, and he's been doing it for a long time. Huge respect for him and all he's doing. So that's it. Thanks for listening. I'll speak to you soon. Thanks to my podcast engineer, Ewan Hinselwood. Thanks to Joshua Eustace, aka Telephone Tel Aviv, for all the beautiful music. And thank you guys for listening. Deeper Into Movies. Speak soon.